So today we have Zoe from Georgia. Thank you for coming on today. Tell us a little bit about what you did and what your position was on the campaign.
Yeah, so my job was program director for the Community Mobilization Program. We built a team that was nearly 3,000 Georgians strong.
Wow.
And we just hired regular folks from the community to turn out their own friends and family at the polls on January 5th. It was an incredible opportunity to get a ton of people really invested in the race in a way that historically is not the case. And I can say a little bit more about that too, but when the community mobilizers that we hired, that team that we built was nearly 75% African-American folks, which was fantastic. We built a really intentional team. And you saw that diversity through all of our management positions. But, we say that there's these voices that we need to center and that are not heard at the table. And the leadership all the way from the top of the OSOF team was very much if that is true, which it is, and we know it is, what better way to genuinely and authentically center voices of folks that need to be heard than literally putting them on the team?
Right. Totally.
Let's take these people that we want to vote and deserve better representation, and let's hire them. So overwhelmingly, we're talking almost all of our mobilizers, it was their first campaign they were ever on.
Wow, that's amazing. And because a lot of national dialogue about campaigns centers on how the Democratic Party hires organizers to come into communities and basically kind of tell the organizers how things should be run. And I think what you've done, you centered local community organizers, and I think that's how the Democratic Party should operate going further. So a question I have is how did you identify people to organize in certain communities? Who was willing to take that lead on?
So this started all the way with John, and then my boss, who is the senior advisor on the campaign, Keenan Pantoni. But the conversations that we were having were very much we had less than a month really to do this job and get this done, right? By the time we were able to build some of the infrastructure we needed and have everything up and running, the number of days actually to do the mobilization work that had to happen was not many. We were very fortunate that we had the eyes of the country on us, where it was and this is not a situation all campaigns find themselves in, but our limiting factor wasn't fundraising or financing this specific program. It was time.
Okay.
But with that being said, right, the organizing takes time. Organizing is real meaningful work that doesn't happen overnight.
It's hard. It's very hard.
Our approach to this program was the organizing that's going to be done's been done. Stacey Abrams and folks have worked really hard for years to do this organizing work. The Georgia Democratic Party worked very hard to deliver Joe Biden the state. We were there to help with the final push to get people back to the polls. So when we say it was a mobilization program, it really was truly a mobilization program. So we didn't hire for this program organizers. We hired because you have your friends and family, right? You don't need, you know them, you're organized, you have your network. We just need your network to the polls.
Yes, totally.
Yeah. So that was the approach we took was who are the people that may sit this election out or just aren't that engaged in politics? Where are the voters that the turnout score is maybe lower, not 90% or 80%. How are we talking to them in a way that's not at them, but to them, with them?
Right.
So when we did the recruitment for this program, we hired a recruitment director, and that recruitment director hired 3 to 4 recruitment managers. Darren Owens, who is one of my favorite people on the planet, he actually works in John's Senate office now in Georgia.
Oh, awesome.
He was on Kamala's team before that, and then he worked a little in Arizona. Truly a rock star human being.
Yes.
But he built a team. He's from Georgia. He's a Georgian, so
that's a good thing to have a Georgian running it.
Totally.
Yeah.
And his job was to think very strategically where we need to be promoting this job opportunity. And I mentioned earlier, we were very fortunate that John Ossoff was able to raise a lot of money for this race.
Right.
one of the things that he ran on was a platform of like jobs. It was health, jobs, and justice, right?
And I'm assuming like those three issues are what motivated the community mobilizers to get involved, right? Like what kind of issues got people motivated?
First and foremost, like it's a pandemic. Like people are really hurting.
Right.
So one of the things we did was we paid people to do this work on the team, right? Like we're asking you to do a task to get your friends and family to the polls. Like we will pay you to do that. Like you are a team member. And we pay people $500 a week to share out their own friends and family. Yeah, it was awesome and we could. We had a budget to do that, and one of like the really exciting things about the program was like we were able to redistribute like millions of dollars of wealth back into the community directly into the hands of folks really hurting.
Guys, this is where your fundraising money goes. So I know some people are cynical that, oh my God, why would I give to a political campaign? That money's going to be wasted. But like, no, this money can trickle back into communities that need it, and we need to hire people. So, yeah.
I mean, my philosophy, and like, I'm on a mayoral race now for this awesome guy, Dr. Gavi Begtrap, who's running in Cincinnati.
Awesome.
And like, my belief is very much, and like, this was coming from the top too, like, when you invest in staff, you don't regret it.
Right.
Right?
No. Yeah. The more staff,
totally. Mail and TV are important, and like, they did that too, but like, we could have done more TV, right? Or more mail is like my understanding, but like, John Ossoff and his leadership team were like, no, like people matter. Right. And like, we will win this race by having real conversations on the ground. Definitely. So let's do that.
And a criticism of campaigns, especially from young people, is that a lot of campaigns hire fellows and interns, but don't end up paying them. What is your view? Do you think that most labor and work on campaigns should be paid? And is that an incentive for young people to get involved?
So I can only speak for myself as someone who does campaign work and like not on behalf of like the Ossoff team at all. Like wearing my own hat on this, I think this is a very like nuanced question. Definitely. And I think that like, or rather the answer is relatively nuanced. I think that there is a real issue in this industry when it comes to like talking about creating an environment that is equitable. Because, as you know, campaigns have a finite end date. They have to fundraise. Like, we don't just have money. Right. And your fundraising, you can make predictions and you, like, build a budget based on your estimated fundraising as it comes in. And, like, that is subject to change with, like, the things that happen in the world at that time.
And it's out of your control, like.
Yeah. And then, like, when the race is over, you're also... your job's done.
Right.
So I know some in campaigns sometimes call it fun employment, like in the race over, like, oh, it's fun employment time. But like having these gaps of employment, that's not a luxury that everyone is able to afford.
Right. Yeah. It hurts low income and mostly people of color.
Totally.
Yeah. It benefits wealthier people because I've come across that. Working on the Ed Markey campaign, I was a fellow, but we weren't paid. And a lot of the students, I think, came from wealthier backgrounds.
Absolutely. You see that constantly. And my thoughts, so like the way I do this on my campaigns is my internships are unpaid and my fellowships are paid.
That's good.
I work for candidates that are progressive. And yes, paying interns is there's very legitimate reasons that it is an important thing to do in adding people to the pipeline. I will also say that if you are running a campaign with a candidate that has no name ID and isn't taking corporate money and isn't taking money from a lot of other groups that we don't ideologically like agree with or believe that should have political financial contributions, the pool of money you have is not big.
Right.
But what I think is there's no perfect answer to this.
Right. It's very nuanced
But I think that what has been successful in my campaigns is we do internships, and it's important to be very flexible with those people in your internship program with their schedules, understanding that sometimes they're working multiple jobs.
Right.
So if you can only do Thursdays from 7 p.m. to 10:30 and you're willing to like do that work that we need done, like I will work with you and like we will get that done. And for the interns that like are kicking ass and busting butt and like hard work is seen.
Yes,
has been my
definitely.
experience. Then make sure that you have the channels to move those interns up into a paid fellowship program. And at the very least, if you can't move every intern to a paid fellowship program, my commitment is you will leave an internship program that I run beyond qualified for a paid organizer full-time job, like in your next campaign.
That's awesome.
And I will do everything I can to get you on a campaign that you believe in. And no, it's not perfect, but other things that you can do, and like, this is where equal and equity are different. If you really want to work on this campaign and you really want, and you cannot afford it, like you are a hostess at a restaurant and you just need those hours. Like, I have never had a campaign manager tell me we can't find money to pay them the difference for that shift. So like, I had this on my congressional race where like this intern was kicking ass. Like awesome. She ended up being an organizer on the coordinated for Georgia. Wow. And we were like, if we can find this money to pay this intern, like then she doesn't have to do this hostess shift during the pandemic and she can do more work for us. And like, we figured it out. So like, I do think that you can make, like, when there is a will, there is a way.
Definitely.
And a paid internship program, if that is a core requirement and there is no exceptions made, what I think happens is we deny opportunities to teach and like include more young people in the campaign process.
Right. And then you get less people from communities that you're trying to target. And wow, I wish I worked with you because no, there's a level of compassion. And one thing I want to say to young people is that if you don't feel comfortable on a campaign, if people aren't treating you well, then like you have to reevaluate and maybe it's not the place for you. And a lot of young people are uncomfortable doing that because they think, okay, I got this position, I need to stay here and this is where I'm meant to be. But no, you can be flexible. Another question.
Can I add to that point?
Definitely.
I think that like, it's often easy to be intimidated by folks that like seem to have a lot more experience in this line of work. And my experience has just been personally that don't let like the name, like just because you don't get the insider joke from like 2 cycles ago or you don't know who like the incumbent is from the next district, like you are qualified to be an intern or be like a staffer on this race. You don't actually need to know who the incumbent is from 2 districts over. You need to want to make the world a better place and know how to have a regular conversation with a person that lives in the community that you're working in or that is often your neighbor or your parent or your friend, and just connect for them how like the change they want to see in the world can happen in part on the ballot. And like, if you can do that, it doesn't matter what you know in terms of politics.
Yeah, no, I totally agree because imposter syndrome, as you know, in politics is really bad. It's really bad.
Yeah, and then we treat young staff poorly, like on time. Like you're an unpaid intern, you may not be treated that well, and you're scared to leave, and you don't know what you're getting out of this, but you don't know what you're giving up if you leave. Like,
yeah, no, totally. And one question I wanted to ask you, kind of shifting more toward like talking about young activism and how we get young people involved in politics. What issues do you think young people care about the most? And do you kind of agree that there's a level of cynicism that we need to overcome, especially in like leftist circles that's popular on Twitter a little bit?
That's an interesting, So in 2018, I was the organizing director for Next Gen in Arizona. So we registered like 12,500 voters. It was an awesome experience, and we organized on 24 campuses across the state. We had like these, based on like good research and cool stuff, we had like these 10 buckets of issues like climate change, LGBT rights, healthcare, repro justice, how affordable housing, etc. And we had young people like choose which issues matter to them. Often young people choose all of the issues. Yeah. I think that what young voters, young people seem to care about, I think you can kind of find like 10 main societal issues and like put them in these buckets. But what I think is really important for us as campaign staff to think about is it is not an issue of apathy when it comes to people not voting.
Right.
It's an issue of ignorance. And I don't mean that in like a patronizing way. I don't have to convince you that just because your skin is black, like the fact that you are more likely to be shot by the police is a problem. Like, overwhelmingly, young people in society feel strongly that that is true. What is not necessarily as clear to folks is that there are positions municipally at the county level that are on your ballot with names you may not recognize or you may not have heard about that have direct power on fixing that issue.
Right. And that's an issue I have with the nationalization of our politics, because the media is so focused on, you know, the presidential race, congressional races. It creates a level of apathy in young people and especially marginalized communities, because they think that the federal government sometimes has like the most impact on their lives because that's what the media focuses on. And how do we get more people, like, is it up to communities to activate certain groups of people to fight against certain influences in their local communities? Like, how do we localize elections? That's like a big question, I know.
I think that if there was like a one correct answer, we would have fixed it. And I think that like where responsibility falls for this is like complex. It's like it's many people, but I think it can start with like, if you are listening to this podcast, it is your job to go talk to everyone in your life and help them see how the thing they already care about, the value set they already have, they can take action on that by being involved civically. And like, bad political leaders, they don't just happen overnight.
Oh no.
No. And like many races, you know, if a candidate runs for one, it's not uncommon that you see their name later for another. If you care deeply about LGBT issues or reproductive justice, and you're not voting in your school board race, like, that is a problem.
Wake up call.
Yeah, because you know who decides often on the curriculum they're going to teach in the schools? Like, if your sexual education is inclusive of LGBT folks, often your school board has something to say about that. And you know what school board also is? It's a launching pad for things like the legislature, which is, for like, you know, not everyone's familiar with all the terms, but if your state is a country, your legislature, that's like your Congress. Right? Like, and if you're in the legislature, it's not a big stretch for you to often run for Congress. So we're like, why are these Congress people so lame? And it's like, did anyone pay attention when they were on the school board?
Exactly. Thank you. That's a good answer. And it is up to young people, I think, to educate themselves and kind of like move beyond like.
But it's hard. Like,
it is hard. It is hard.
Like, if you're not a poli-sci major in college, when are you having these like deeper conversations about what these elected positions mean in everyday life? And, you know, one of the things that I think is a really great starting point is, how can we take this thing that we're like talking about right now and make it the simplest language possible? And like, you know, take the governor's race as an example. When I was working in Arizona in 2018, we had this awesome candidate running for governor that really cared about like immigration reform and public education, and was running against our current governor, who's like, I'm from Arizona, so like, he sucks, Doug Ducey. And you know, we'd ask young people on campus like, hey, are you gonna vote in the governor's race? Like, are you involved in the governor's race? And like, if you stop 10 people on that campus, they couldn't tell you who the governor is or what the governor does. And it's not because they're dumb. It's because, like, why would they know? No one's talked to them about it. They maybe took a government class in high school, which was like 7 years ago. But as soon as we said, hey, my name's Zoe, nice to meet you. I'm going to take up 2 seconds of your time here. But if Arizona was a country, the governor would be the president. They can't do everything, but they can do a lot. And if you sit out our governor's race that is coming up right now, you're giving up your vote for president of our state. And that's a really big deal. You like saw the like in their eyes like the change in that, like, they now understand what you were saying. And you have their attention.
No, simplifying issues is so important, and that's why I liked Elizabeth Warren so much, because she would take these broad issues that people thought was too complex and she would like boil them down to.
She's a teacher.
I love her teacher skills in politics.
And it's our job to be teachers, right? And like, a good teacher is not patronizing, and a good teacher doesn't make you feel dumb or feel bad for not knowing. They just help you get where you need to be. And
that's one thing I wish like some people on the left were better about, because I think sometimes we can be really patronizing. Like, oh my gosh, you're so uneducated. How did you not know about this? Even if it's like not explicit, they're like on campaigns sometimes, even I felt like oh no, I'm behind, I don't know about these issues. Like, yeah.
I feel like that now, and I am a campaign manager on a race for in a major U.S. city. But like, I think you're totally right. There was a really good term a friend introduced me to on this, which is like predatory listening, where you're like
Yeah.
ready to, like, you are listening to someone, ready to jump on them for like saying it like not the most correct way, or for like not knowing all the things. And it's like, I do think giving people like feedback is important, and that like terms matter, but like, can we do this in a way where we are like bringing people with us, not like shaming them for not being where we want them to be currently. So I think you're totally right. I think we like have a lot of room for growth on that.
Totally. And like, there are limits. Like, if someone's being like openly disrespectful, like, I wouldn't expect someone to sit there and talk with them. But like, no, we need to be better at listening. One thing I want to shift our focus on is Texas. I kind of want to focus on Texas. I know you worked in Georgia, but Texas is like our next big swing state. Are there any important lessons you learned? So, like, should the Democratic Party in Texas focus on community mobilizers, and should most of their money go to funding local community organizations to find new activists?
So I will give a huge shout out where credit is due. The Mobilizer program was made possible in part because we had some amazing like folks from the Texas 2020 general on our team who took some of these tools, some of the tools and tactics we used in the relational program were piloted on Shree's race, who ran for Congress in Texas.
Shree Kulkarni, yep. Awesome.
Yeah. Shree was a huge ally for the Mobilizer program.
Thank you, Shree.
Yes, big thank you. And his, I think Josh was a DigiDem, but Josh Kravitz was on that race. And Josh Kravitz is a data wizard and built literally everything I could have possibly needed for us to track and do the work that needed to happen with our mobilizers. From like literally, we invented like a new phone banking app. Awesome. He was the one who built that team that made that happen. But also credit where it is due. So Luke Warford, I hope I'm saying his last name correctly, who is the chief strategist officer for the Texas Democratic Party right now. I was on a call with him just last week because they are building a mobilizer plan
awesome.
And building a budget to have a mobilizer program. And I don't think it is lost on them that they will flip that state when everyone who can vote does vote.
Right.
And the way you do that is by having the most trusted source of information, your own personal friend or family member be the vehicle of information to deliver the information to you about the election. Totally. Because, the most persuasive thing is a peer-to-peer conversation. So how do we have more of those?
Yeah, no, I think relational organizing is one of like the most effective tools of voter turnout because, oh my gosh, I was getting bombarded with phone banks near the end of the election, and I was going to listen to my friend over an organizer I didn't know. And I think that is how we're going to flip Texas. If we invest in the Rio Grande Valley, if we invest in like underserved communities, like this is how we're going to flip Texas. And I want to thank you for all the work you did in Georgia. Like, you really impressed me, and the program really impresses me, and I wish we had that in Pennsylvania. And any words of advice, I guess, to people who want to be organizers?
Yes, not to interrupt you so bluntly, but I would say credit where, like, in the vein of like credit where it is due, like it was a team effort. Like,
thank you, Stacey Abrams. Thank you.
Yeah, and also to like the mobilizers team, like I had such a badass team of deputies and really regional managers. We had 35 regional managers, 4 deputies, a train director, 4 train managers, and we had an operations team of almost 30 folks, like led by Shabani Chakrabarti. Like it was a massive thing that was built so quickly. And when we think about like what made it so successful, in part, we had strong managers and good data. Awesome. Because, typically with management, what you need is like clear communication and consistency. We had clear communication. We did not have consistency, but it was like consistently inconsistent was the timeline of the program. But also, if you were in Pennsylvania, Brady Hill was one of our deputies on that team.
Brady Hill. I think I've heard that name before. Definitely.
Yeah. Brady was is awesome and wants mobilizers all over all over Pennsylvania. But I think that this is a doable thing. I think that we know how to win. We just need people. Like, we don't have to change hearts and minds when it comes to issues. Like, we win on the issues, right? We just, like, need to win at the ballot box. And, like, it's totally a rigged system because, like, totally Republicans choose the maps. But that's okay. Like, there was an Israeli Supreme Court justice who had, like, one of my favorite quotes. And I, like, feel so horrible. I don't remember their name, but you can look it up and you should Google it. But it's, like, you know, in a democracy, we often feel like we have to fight with one hand tied behind our back. But nevertheless, we have the upper hand.
Yes.
Like,
yes. That is powerful.
And it's, like, it feels true, right? Like, yeah, they put all these voter suppression laws in place. And, yeah, like, the maps are whacked. But, like, we people want fresh air and clean water and justice. Right. And, like, if we can just deliver the message and the information on how to go to the polls to them, like, they will go. And it's, like, our job to make that as easy as possible and as inclusive as possible.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I feel like that's a good note to end on, a note of hope. We have the upper hand, the moral upper hand. We're fighting for people. And yeah, thank you so much, Zoe. Yeah,
my pleasure. Thank you for having me. This is so exciting, and thank you for this work that you do. I am excited to see this podcast grow and young people get more involved and us have a better and more just country.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Every election cycle.
Yes. 2022, here we come.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah.